seems that Bill Maher has once again decided to reevaluate his attitude toward Donald Trump. This time, he called the first 100 days of his presidency not something significant or unexpected, but simply a lousy show. In other words, instead of the promised huge changes, we got something like a boring TV show with a hastily written script, actors who forgot their lines, and viewers yawning by the 5th minute. Maher, as usual, plays the role of the exposer, saying that he now understands everything and is ready to tell you how wrong it all went.
We hit the 100-day mark of the Trump administration, as you know, this week, and the numbers are kind of in the toilet. 39% of America approval rating. That's the lowest 100-day mark for a president in 80 years. It's like America remarried their ex and remembered why they got divorced in the first place.
The comedian and talk show host admitted that he initially wanted to give Trump a chance. He even promised himself that he would not criticize him in advance, that he would not condemn him at the outset or label him. However, as he himself says, his patience quickly ran out. Because according to him, everything Trump has done in his second term as president is, and I quote, just objectively bad. Not controversial, not ambiguous, but frankly weak, stupid, and harmful. And at this point, according to Maher, no amount of neutrality will help. You have to call a spade a spade. Maher, who for years never missed an opportunity to criticize Trump and even publicly called for his impeachment on more than one occasion, suddenly decided to change his tune. Last month, without much fanfare, he agreed to have dinner with Trump himself. And not only was the former president at the table, but also Kid Rock, a musician, Republican, and regular at such events. A strange trio, if you think about it.
And now for what I know you've all been waiting for, I'd like to give you my book report on my visit to the White House.
Maher, seemingly an ideological opponent, sits down to dinner with a man he has mercilessly criticized and one of his outspoken fans. Either he wanted to get a closer look at the whole circus, or he simply couldn't pass up the opportunity to chat over dinner with a living political caricature. Maher explained his unexpected visit quite nobly. He claims that he went to dinner not out of curiosity or for the show, but to try to diffuse the situation and reduce the level of hostility between him and Trump. It seemed like a gesture of a mature, reasonable person who had decided to come out of the trenches and talk. However, what happened next surprised even his own audience. After dinner, he said that Trump, in his observation, was gracious and restrained. Yes, the same Trump whom he had been calling a threat to democracy for years. Moreover, Maher added that the man at the table was not at all like the madman he sees on television. In short, either Trump had seriously worked on his image in one evening, or television really knows how to turn people into caricatures. In any case, Maher's words caused a real storm, as if he had said something seditious, especially to his own viewers. In his recent article for the Free Press, Maher decided to stop mincing words. He took Trump and his actions to task with a bluntness usually reserved for late-night bars. According to him, after 100 days in office, there are at least 100 reasons why all of this can and should be openly hated. The list is impressive. People disappearing, as if the country is now filled with nothing but missing person reports. The complete failure of Doge, which apparently symbolizes technological impotence. The blatant disregard for Supreme Court decisions, as if they were never made. The death of civilians abroad amid sharp cuts in humanitarian aid. The dismissal of the person responsible for the integrity of the election simply because he refused to lie about the 2020 results. The collapse of the market due to trade tariffs. America, which no one now perceives as a safe country. Talk of a possible third term, as if the Constitution is now optional. Lawsuits against the media because the press is getting in the way. And, for starters, Andrew Tate, just to top it all off with absurdity. I could go on, Maher concluded, as someone tired of trying to find logic in this chaos. At the same time, he emphasizes that everything he criticizes has nothing to do with blind party animosity. It's not because he's reflexively against Republicans, it's just that everything listed above is, in his opinion, objectively bad. And as he added deep down, even those who pretend not to notice understand this. Less than a month after his ill-fated dinner with Trump, Maher decided to speak out again, this time with his characteristic blend of irony and skepticism. He described his experience with the president as total crap, but not as total crap as I thought it would be. This sounds almost like a compliment, considering how he had previously described Trump. After the dinner, Maher said, "There's no crazy person living in the White House. There's a person who just pretends to be crazy on TV a lot." He then paused to remind his audience that he understands everything. It doesn't matter what Trump is like in private conversations with a comedian. What matters is how the rest of the world sees him. Because it is this image that influences decisions, conflicts, and lives outside the cozy confines of a restaurant.
So I think he was happy to have a guy's dinner with someone who was, it might be actually a relief not to have all the ass kissers around all the time. Somebody who was making him laugh, joking with him, but, needling him a little bit. And I don't know, I have no...
Nevertheless, Maher tried to extract something positive from the evening. According to him, the very fact that Trump has another side is already a small discovery. Everything that repelled him, as he put it, I swear to God, was absent at the table. He did not see the grotesque man from the screens there.
I mean, Trump really is one of the most effective politicians, whatever you think of the policy and him as a person, just as a politician, just understanding that always lean in to being more who you are. The people are not savvy about issues, but they smell a phony a mile away.
He acknowledged that he still had many complaints about the Trump administration itself. However, he noted that the president had at least found the desire to spend enough time with him and showed some willingness to listen and even, suddenly, accept him as a potential friend. And that, as Maher summed up, was the main point of the dinner. Not to change opinions, but at least to start a dialogue between people who, in a normal situation, would not even sit down at the same table. Also that evening, Donald Trump signed one of the most important documents in human history.
This list of almost 60 different insulting epithets that the president has said about me. Things like stupid, dummy, lowlife dummy, sleazebag, sick, sad, stone cold crazy. Really a dumb guy, fired like a dog, his show is dead. There's 60. I brought this to the White House because I wanted him to sign it, which he did.
Well, of course, changing your opinion of Trump in one evening is, to put it mildly, no easy task, especially if your opinion is like this. Bill Maher is the kind of person who not only never misses an opportunity to troll Trump, but does so with such love that viewers no longer know who he hates more, Trump himself or everything associated with him. Since Trump's presidential campaign, Maher has diligently built an image of himself as someone who not only disagrees with Trump's policies, but seems to live in a parallel universe where Trump is a walking disaster, and liberal values are humanity's last hope. Every time Trump appeared on screen, it was an opportunity for Maher to unleash another barrage of sarcasm. He doesn't just criticize Trump's political decisions, no, he turns it into a comedy laboratory, where Trump becomes the main antagonist of every possible disaster. If Maher were in Hollywood, he would have written a script about a president who saves the world with his decisions. Well, except in the worst possible nightmares. With this approach, he has literally made criticism of Trump his brand, and as they say, if it weren't for Trump, Maher would have had to invent him. One of the first highlights of their feud happened back in 2016, when Donald Trump had just started his presidential campaign. For Bill Maher, it was a real reason to put on a show, and of course not to celebrate, but to give a masterclass in political satire. Maher discussed Trump's intellectual antics on his platforms with such pleasure and sarcasm that it seemed as if he had a whole arsenal of witty expressions just for this occasion. He emphasized with undisguised delight that Trump is not just unpredictable, but literally a psychopath. And, judging by his statements, he would be absolutely dangerous in the role of president. Maher often emphasized that Trump uses such primitive and populist tactics that viewers seem to forget. This is not a sitcom, but a real election campaign. At times, it seemed that Trump had no other goal than to attract attention by any means necessary, whether through stupid insults or absurd statements. Maher unabashedly pointed out that Trump's political views sometimes completely contradicted the foundations of U.S. democracy, and if there were such a title as Anti-Democrat of the Year, Trump could easily win it. In general, for Maher, it was not just a fight against a candidate, but a real stage for satire, where every new appearance of Trump on the air provided material for another dose of sarcasm. After Trump became president, Bill Maher's criticism took the form of a truly uncompromising show. He no longer just made fun of Trump, but turned his actions and decisions into material for constant ridicule. Every decision he made, whether on domestic policy, foreign affairs, or even relations with the press, became the subject of mockery. Maher did not shy away from calling Trump stupid and unprepared for such an important position. At the same time, he consistently emphasized that Trump was completely unfit for public service and leadership, and that if you had to choose a president, he was definitely not the right choice. Throughout Trump's first term, Maher continued to point out his instability and propensity for conflict, as if it were important for the president to always have chaos around him. Trump was particularly criticized for his attitude toward human rights, environmental policy, and, of course, his behavior on the international stage, which, according to Maher, strongly resembled a circus performance. For Maher, Trump became a symbol of everything that was wrong with democracy and civilized values.
Our system is an honor system, and he has no honor. So everything they thought we didn't have to write down, don't keep your business empire going.
Like many others, Maher expressed concern about how Trump was destroying trust in government institutions and undermining democratic values. And of course, this could not fail to provoke a wave of sarcasm from Maher. If anyone should be standing guard over democratic principles, it is clearly not Trump. In later years, especially against the backdrop of the COVID-19 pandemic, Bill Maher did not miss a single opportunity to strike at Trump again. He sharply criticized his response to the crisis, pointing out how the president ignored scientific data and seemed completely oblivious to what was happening in the world. Maher literally shouted on television that such inaction not only cost thousands of lives, but also deepened political divisions in the country. Instead of turning to scientific advisors or listening to experts, Trump, according to Maher, was more concerned with stirring up even more animosity than solving real problems. The picture was exacerbated by his preference for superficial, often absurd solutions that were unlikely to comfort anyone, but were perfect for the next round of political theater.
So they went to, he's weird. People love this. This is selling. People are buying this one. And it's really upsetting Trump because he was doing an interview with Sean Hannity, and he's kind of obsessed with this weird thing. He said, no, Walls is the one who's weird.
But despite all these vivid and sometimes harsh attacks, Bill Maher always made it clear that his criticism was not directed solely at Trump as a person. It was much more serious than that. Maher was concerned about the consequences of Trump's political course for the future of the country. He warned that such policies primarily threaten stability, democratic institutions, and the very foundations on which the American system is built. In Muir's eyes, Trump was not just a mistake in history, but a real threat that could leave an indelible mark on the future. On his last show, Bill Maher, in his usual manner of sarcasm and political realism, did not forget the Republicans, whom he calls zombified followers of the cult of Donald Trump. According to Maher, the Republican Party has long ceased to be a political organization. It is now a religious movement with one God. These people no longer vote for ideas, Murrow told his audience. They vote for one man, regardless of what he says or does. He could call gravity a hostile theory, and they would start flying around rallies, waving their arms.
Republican Congressman Addison McDowell wants to name Dulles Airport after Trump. It'll be like other airports, except the international terminal only has departures. There's also a bill in Congress to add Trump to Mount Rushmore, because like Washington, he's a patriot. Like Teddy Roosevelt, he's a renegade. And like Abraham Lincoln, he's not really helping the theater scene in Washington, D.C.
And now it's 2025. Trump is president again, which means a new batch of jokes about his tan, his tweets, and the whole unpredictable political merry-go-round we're all riding again. Maker, like his audience, is already starting to prepare new jokes, sarcasm, and sharp comments because, as they say, the show must go on. All the old topics, just like in previous years, are back in the spotlight. Twitter scandals, strange statements, endless, eccentric antics. It's safe to say that for Maher, it's probably like the long-awaited premiere of a new season of his favorite sitcom. Only the roles don't change, but you still can't stop laughing. Jokes and laughter are great, of course, but it's important to understand that there is often a much more serious problem behind them. In reality, it doesn't matter who becomes president next time, because the result we should be paying attention to is what we do with it in the future. Will we continue to sit in the front row, happily watching the faces of politicians change on the screen, while failing to notice how our reality is changing dramatically? By immersing ourselves in laughter and humor, we risk missing the big picture, how this will affect us all as the political system increasingly turns into a circus. The problem is not that we like to laugh. It's normal to laugh when something absurd or strange happens in politics. But it's important to remember that behind the comedy there is always the real world, with its problems and consequences. And yes, Trump is back in the president's chair. So what? We can keep laughing, discussing his tweets, and making fun of his decisions for a long time. But if this situation continues to elicit laughter, perhaps it is a sign that something is wrong. There is too much absurdity to accept it as normal. And if we don't start taking what's happening seriously, we'll continue to be entertained on our screens. Will there be anything left of our society when this circus is over? This is a time for reflection, not for simply laughing and pretending that everything is fine.